Hello from the Grand Floridian. We are here to tell you our big news.
Which is that we just became DVC owners here.
This might be a surprise to some of you. Certainly it was a surprise to us. We never considered joining DVC.
But we want to tell you the story of sort of how it happened and why it makes sense for us to do.
So we've been going to Disney since we were kids, and generally we stayed off-site except I think one time at Caribbean Beach.
Our parents had a Marriott timeshare, so we stayed there for years until they sold it like a year or two ago.
We never considered DVC, like just the two of us. Our parents certainly never considered it, and I think there's definitely like a misconception, or just like people think that timeshares can be ripoffs, which I think is true a lot of times. So that's kind of what we thought.
We obviously have been exposed to DVC a lot, and we literally always were like, oh, that does not make sense, so expensive, so crazy.
But at the same time, our dream was always like, one day we'll bring our family and stay in like a grand villa at the Grand Floridian. Like that was always our dream. So it's funny that we never actually seriously looked into it until we had a little snafu, a little mix-up at Wilderness Lodge.
So in January, we were staying at Wilderness Lodge, and we were going up the elevator. It was right next to the DVC desk, and the woman there was just making conversation with us while we waited for the elevator.
And she was like, oh, do you want to see the Copper Creek cabins, which are these really expensive, really nice cabins with a private hot tub and all this stuff? And we were like, yes, absolutely. She's like, no strings attached, nothing, no presentation. Just
she didn't say that.
Wait. She just made it sound like we were just gonna go see the cabins. So then she was like, all right, we just have to wait for someone to bring you. So we waited around for a bit. This guy comes and he's like, yeah, let's go. And he brings us into a sample room with a little office.
She had told us that we would see a 2-bedroom villa and a cabin. So I was like, okay, we're going into the 2-bedroom villa. But it clearly wasn't set up like a 2-bedroom villa, because there was a conference room table with a TV on.
And a giant DVC presentation up. So we sat down, actually. So her Mouslet C, Mouslet A, and the sales guy all sat at the table, and then I was off in a corner,
on a stool,
on in the corner because they didn't have enough chairs. And I was just I was absolutely not sold, and I was just trying to get us out of there at first. So he was talking, I was like, we're not interested. It doesn't make sense for us.
I will say we could have absolutely left, but we felt too awkward to be like, wait. We didn't know this was going to be a sales pitch, so we're like, I guess we'll just stay and kind of try to be like, oh no, he literally was asking us, how often do you come and how long are your trips? And we were completely lying.
Yeah, he was like, how often do you come? And we were like,
once a year.
Once a year, which is weird.
Not
because,
true.
But I don't think we gained anything by lying.
No, we were just trying to sort of be like, no, this doesn't make sense for us to wrap the presentation up as quickly as possible.
Bring us to the cabin. As he starts getting into it, we kind of started asking some questions. There were things we didn't know about, the point system or different resorts and things like that. And we were intrigued, just even being in the Disney space. I was just intrigued to kind of learn, but not really thinking about us.
Yeah, we were mostly curious. There were questions and we were like, wait, how would this work? How would that work? And then as the presentation progressed, the conversation did actually transition more and more to us asking questions about
oh, we're kind of considering this.
Yeah.
So they were selling right now contracts for Grand Floridian and for Riviera, and we were we stayed in the Grand Floridian once before on a trip, and we love it here. We love it here so much. So we were like, oh my gosh, and it's a really good deal. And so we were like, wow, and so then we started asking way more questions. And in the end, he wasn't super pushy. He wasn't trying to really sell us. I mean, he was trying to really sell us, but he wasn't trying to force us to sign the contract. He was just here's my contact info. I'll call you and email you once a week.
I will say at the end, he was like, okay, bye guys. And we were like, wait, can we see a cabin? He was like, oh yeah, I guess. He had never any idea that we were supposed to see a cabin. It was fully a sales pitch, but it was really effective because I feel like we learned a lot about DVC and who it makes sense for and why it makes sense that we didn't know. We'd always assumed this is some crazy expensive thing that you do if you're you have a ton of money and you want to spend it all at Disney, okay, but that's really not exactly the case.
So we went to the pool after we saw the cabin, and he gave us a whole stack of information. We were kind of talking. We were like, are we considering this? This is crazy. We never have thought about this. And then an hour later, we were like, actually we were in there for a while, but 2 hours later, we missed our Peter Pan flight lightning lane. We were like, wow, this actually kind of seems like it might make sense for us. So we talked about it, and as we were thinking about the benefits of it to us, which we'll kind of get into in a minute, we just realized that this could be kind of perfect for what we want, which is we really, really are used to staying in an apartment style hotel, because that's what we always stayed at with our timeshare. So having a kitchen, having 2 bathrooms, having a living room. and we could never travel to Disney and just stay in a regular hotel room for an extended
So
period.
we really need the space and like the common space with our family, and therefore a villa at Disney is what makes the most sense. We'd either really need to stay off-site at like an apartment type Airbnb thing or in one of their timeshare villas, or we have to stay in a DVC villa on site.
And more with like the way that Disney has been changing, we realized that staying off site, which used to not really matter that much, even booking fast passes 30 days versus 60 days,
It was fine.
It never really affected us. It really didn't. But now with like early entry and just like the perks that you're getting for individual lightning lanes and things, we were like, it's hard to stay off site. Like there's benefits to staying on site.
We also really like the Disney bubble. We come a lot, and getting to stay in the Disney bubble is really nice when you can. And then with all the added perks, it kind of like you have to. And I assume Disney's just going to continue making it so that you are more pushed to stay on site.
So, the perks were like great. We were like, we would love to stay at the Grand Floridian. We would love to do all this. But I personally was like very, very, very questioning the money. So my also one made this whole spreadsheet, like this giant Excel sheet.
And basically what we looked at, so the way that DVC works is there is a cost for your contract. I think it's a 45-year contract, depending on where you're
ours expires in
staying.
2064.
Yeah. So it's an initial base cost for the number of points you're buying, and you pay a price per point. So for example, right now, I think it was $217 per point at the Grand Floridian for a minimum of 150 points. And that roughly is like $30,000 or something like that. There's also some smaller fees like closing fees that you pay one time. And then every year there are annual fees, which right now are like 5% or something like that.
And that was where our parents were like, no, like annual fees, because annual fees can continue to change and go up, and they will continue to go up. But when you do the breakdown over 45 years, we'll give the example of how much a hotel room has changed. Michael Eisner or Bob Iger, whoever gave that example.
Yeah, I was reading Michael Eisner's book, and in it he's talking about bringing Steve Jobs around Art of Animation right before Art of Animation opened.
Wait, Eisner? That couldn't have been Eisner.
No, sorry, Iger. Iger was bringing Steve Jobs around right before Art of Animation opened, which I think was 2012, I want to say.
I thought it was 14, but continue.
Somewhere around then. And Steve Jobs was like, this isn't a nice resort. And he was like, Steve, this is under $100 a night. This is targeting the family who wants to spend under $100 a night at a resort. Which means that at that time when Art of Animation opened 10 years ago, it was under $100 a night.
And now it's like 300,
yeah, 250,
like
best.
depending on which the room is. And also, looking at the Grand Floridian, look at it from like the 1990s, right? Like when we were first coming to the parks to now. I mean, it is on like an astronomical trajectory, and that's kind of everything. But when you map it out to 45 years, what was the hotel room for the Grand? It was like $40,000.
It was unimaginable. I think literally we were assuming that the hotel rooms increased 10%
and like the rate of inflation
per year.
Things.
Yeah. And assuming that, which is what Disney has done for the last like 10 years, even though that sounds insane, it was like a hotel room was going to cost $42,000 a night. Obviously, I don't think that that's going to happen, but like that was the growth. And so we mapped out the sort of like worst case scenario example, like assuming that the Disney hotel rooms increased by the least amount that we would expect them to, and the fees increased by the most amount that you would think they would. It still worked out to be, in the long term, so much cheaper for the type of room that we would want to stay in, which ultimately would be a 2-bedroom here.
Yeah, like 45-year contract, and again, it's like about $30,000. So like less than $1,000 per year, not including annual fees. So then you have $1,000, $1,500 of annual fees. That's still, like right now, even if they never changed anything, that's cheaper than the rooms are. So the math really worked, and we read so many articles, and we did so many, cost calculators, and everyone has this logic. Even like Disney says kind of the same thing. This is who it's worth it. So it's worth it for people who want to stay in a deluxe villa, who come to Disney once or every other year, things like that, and who are going to come to Disney for a very long time. And that we check all those boxes.
I think people often say like it's crazy expensive, it's like ridiculously expensive, and as an upfront cost, it is really expensive.
Yeah.
But over time, if you do the math over those 45 years, and you're basically locking in like the room price right now for the next 45 years, it really works out. I'm happy to send my spreadsheet to anybody who would like it. It's like you can plug things in.
Me and Papa Mouse that were like, there's just no way, like this just doesn't make sense. But really, it does make sense, and so many people are DVC owners, especially Disney's like timeshare program is probably one of the best, if not the best. that there's obviously, not everyone's an idiot, right? There's obviously a reason it does work. So all that being said, we kind of made a decision in maybe like less than a month, I think, and we're like, this makes sense for us. But there was kind of one really big piece that was like we had to figure out, and that was Disney has a crazy high interest rate. So everyone says if you want to buy DVC, you need to buy it in full. So it's $30,000.
We chose to buy 175 points to start. That's what we were going to do. We'll explain a little bit more why on that like later. But that would have been, I think it was like, it worked out total to like $33,000 or $34,000. Disney's interest rate on that, if we had taken out a loan, which you have 10 years to pay off the loan, would have been 10%. And
which is really high.
By the end of, if we had taken all 10 years to pay it off, it literally would have like doubled in price or maybe more. It was like, the math was like crazy.
It's kind of like putting something, like as the analogy that a lot of places gave, like put something that you can't pay for on a credit card. That's not really a super smart thing to do.
The math works out if you're paying that, like for us, $30-something thousand. But if you are then paying 10% on top of that for 10 years and you're actually paying like $70,000, the math really doesn't work as well.
And you don't have to like use a Disney loan. Like there are other things. And we did kind of look and we were like, all right, what does this mean if we were to use like some other kind of thing, and
like Fidelity or something.
Yeah, and then you're getting into just like having a loan and having all these things, and it was like, well, that doesn't make this a smart purchase for like our financial situation. So we did decide to pay it off.
That we paid that base cost, the closing cost, and I think the annual fees for this year.
Yeah.
And the way that it works is, so since our points like re-up every August, we got the points for 2022, which is August 2022 to August 2023, and then in August of this year we'll get our points again. So we got like, we'll sort of have like
a little bonus
this year almost. Yeah. And we chose to get 175 points, and that is because buying at the Grand Floridian, we were looking at what it would take for us to be able to stay in a studio as sort of like a studio for a week at the most peak time, and 175 points will let us do that at any time other than like Christmas Day, which is like completely fine.
So coming like spring break, we could stay in a studio which sleeps 5, and we'd be able to do that, and that was like our starting point, but that's not our ending point. So first we looked at what does it mean if we buy more points from Disney, and it's really, really expensive, and the difference between buying from Disney and buying like resale is after your first contract, not as important. The reason that you don't want to buy resale as your first contract is, one, you lose some of the perks, like doing some of the like special member things, going in the lounge, stuff like that. But more importantly, if Disney builds a new resort and you buy resale, you can't stay in that resort. So this is a 45-year contract. That would mean 30 years Disney has a new resort. They probably will. We would not be able to use our points there. And that would be kind of boxing ourselves in, and we don't even know what the future could be, right? So we decided our first contract definitely had to be through Disney, but if we want to buy a second contract, maybe not.
For us, if we're going to be spending that much money, it makes sense to be like considered true full DVC owners in Disney's eyes and like get all those special extra perks like the DVC discount and everything Maslatu just said.
But we're going to buy another resale contract in the next few years that will have, we're not sure exactly how much, but we're looking at getting more points, and that will allow us to stay in a 2-bedroom at the Grand Floridian, and that's really the end goal. That's really what we want, a week in a 2-bedroom at the Grand.
When we buy those resale points specifically, so let's say we buy 100 points resale, those will only be able to be used at the resorts that exist right now. So while the points we bought through Disney are 175 points, we'll be able to use at any resort that's ever built. The ones we buy resale will only be able to use at those 14, and for us, that trade-off is worth the savings.
So as we took the boat over from Magic Kingdom today to get to the Grand Floridian to film this video and grab lunch, we were just honestly like, oh my God, I can't believe we did this. And like, can't believe we did it because we never even thought about doing it, and it feels like it was like a quick decision, but also this was literally always our dream. And the fact that we were able to do it, like financially, and like even found out about a way to do it was amazing.
I remember as a kid taking the monorail past the Grand Floridian and being like, I hope one day I'll get to stay there. I was like, maybe for my wedding I could stay like one night here, and that would be like the one time in my whole entire life.
Yeah, we also used to like still do. We'll walk to like a really nice resort and be like, oh, like let's just go back to the villa. Like we're exhausted.
And like pretend we're staying there when we're not.
But now we actually are gonna be able to stay there. So it was like a quick list of who DVC is right for. We kind of touched on it, but DVC, it's definitely not right for everyone. And kind of we went over those things, but if you go to Disney every year, every other year, that might be a reason you want to look into it. If you like to stay deluxe, that's another important thing if you are looking for like a deluxe resort. But if you don't go to Disney super often, or you want to stay at a value or a moderate or off-site, this wouldn't really be a good option for you.
DVC has crazy cost savings for deluxe resorts. It does not equate down to like a moderate or a value.
Pop Century will always be cheaper. Art of Animation Family Suites, they're always going to be cheaper than this.
So you have to want to do this. Also, some people will say, well, I can just like rent somebody else's DVC points.
Which we love to do.
Which we love to do, and we do that a lot. And we got enough points to bring our family for a week, but we still come down on a ton of other trips, and we will rent points for those. But for us, it makes sense. When you're renting points, you're paying off somebody else's DVC contract. It makes more sense for us to have our own and lock in those cost savings for ourselves.
So, we bought at the Grand, and we bought those 175 points. We're coming with our parents and Mouselet Sea in May, but we only have 175 points, so we're not going to sleep in a one-room thing with our parents and Mouselet Sea. That would just be brutal. So what we decided to do was use our points at a resort that there's a little more bang for your buck.
Those resorts are typically Old Key West and Saratoga Springs.
And Animal Kingdom
Lodge is also like a lower end one. So we are staying at Saratoga Springs. We borrowed some points from next year to be able to stay in a 2-bedroom villa. It was like a little bit above 175. And that will be our first time ever staying in a 2-bedroom villa. We've never stayed there.
It's going to be really, really great. It's going to be great because we'll all have a separate space. I mean, I'll be in the living room on a Murphy bed, but still.
You can share a room with me and Elsa, see?
On the pull down?
No, there's 2 beds in that room.
I don't want to do that anyway. We'll see. They snore. But it's gonna be so nice for like our parents to feel like they can stay on site, and we have the kitchen and we have the space, and like we just really need that space. And like I didn't really know until like I don't know a couple years ago that even existed at Disney. That's why I thought we always stayed off site, that nothing like that even existed.
And I cannot emphasize how much we could not afford a 2-bedroom villa for a week if it wasn't through doing DVC. I can't. It's even at Saratoga Springs, it's thousands.
If you pay like cash for it, you're paying like
$1,500, $2,000 a night.
And so our annual fees are like $1,500, of course, plus
for this whole year,
$1,000, ish that we're paying. But honestly, this financially worked out really well for us, and I like long term, I trust in the math, and I know that this was a great investment for us. But more so, I'm just so excited that we were able to do something that we kind of always wanted to do.
If you are sitting there and you're like,
we
used to be, and you're like, you're idiots, and you do come very often and want to stay deluxe, I highly recommend looking at the math again. I'm happy to send my spreadsheet to people because we were shocked. Like we were really, really shocked. We always had been like, oh my God, we'd never do that.
I was giving the
guy,
what?
I said we always thought like it's a ripoff.
Oh. Yeah, we did. I basically said that to the DVC sales guy. I was like, I was sitting in the corner too. So like I was giving him such a hard time, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, no, what about this? What about this? What about this? And he like had a good answer. And then he's like, I own my family. And then we talked to a couple other like people who owned it. And I think that everyone just said, and which is so true, it's like a very personal decision. So like we would never like encourage someone to just go buy it, but I would encourage, like you said, people who like think it might be worth it to look into it. If you go to a DVC sales pitch, they might be a little pushy. Sometimes like the people at the kiosks can be pushy. It's their job. But I feel like if they hadn't
done that, we never would have done this.
We never would have done this.
We could have never taken our family on the vacation we're about to take them on. Yeah. So I will say, if you are considering it, there's a lot of like little nuances. So definitely do some research. Like you shouldn't really buy at the Riviera. There's like some weird things.
There's so much to it. So after we had our meeting, we spent so long on the call, and like with each other, talking to our parents, like looking into it, researching. I probably watched every YouTube video on the internet about it. We asked people who hated it. We asked people who loved it. We asked people who sold their contract, and that was kind of how we came to our decision. But yeah, I think we've been kind of teasing this news for a while, but we wanted to have a fun way to announce it, and we thought like we had to announce it
here at the Grand Floridian itself.
We had a heck of a time finding a spot to film this video.
It was really loud everywhere and windy. We're sitting basically in the parking lot on the grass.
Yeah, but the monorail is passing by, and our first day at the Grand Floridian will probably be next year on our contract. And Saratoga will be amazing, but really when we actually get to be here and be like, we're home,
I think that's gonna be really, really cool.
So that's the big news, guys. Please ask us any questions you have. There's so much more to it, like that's more in depth, like all of the math and all of the things we learn. so we can obviously get into that too. But yeah, we're very, very excited, and
we can't wait. We definitely will take you guys along as we actually get started on everything. We're gonna go up to the DVC lounge hopefully when we're here with our family in May in Epcot. So lots of exciting things, but thanks guys.
All right, bye guys.